Here we go. Geometry Chapter 3 review. All the angle correspondence and the angle names. This direction says all pairs of angles, not some, all of them. Which ones are alternate interior? Interior angles are going to be between the two lines that are cut by the transversal. So we're going to name these. I'm going to be real particular about my notation. Angle 2 or you can put an and sign, angle 8. I'm going to use a little semicolon. The other one is angle 3 and angle 5. Make sure that you're showing me them in a group that's easy to distinguish which pairs go together. Showing me them in a group that's easy to distinguish what pairs go together. Alternate exteriors. Focusing on notation. I hear DJ saying my notation, my notation. That's what I'm thinking you guys should be writing down. 1 and 7. Angle 4 and angle 6. Make sure that I can distinguish what pairs you're piecing together. Corresponding. Corresponding angles sit in the same place related to this line right here that we refer to as a transversal. Angle 1 and angle 5. Angle 2 and angle 6. 4 and 8. 3 and 7. Consecutive interiors. Consecutive interiors are inside, in between, and they're on the same side as the transversal. So 2 and 5 and 3 and 8. There's no other answers than those.
Is it alright if I wrote some of these backwards?
Sure. Like you wrote 8 and 3 or 5 and 2? Yeah, as long as you have the pairs together. Of course that's okay. Now, we need to find angle measures, and the directions say tell what theorem we used. If you put the correct vocabulary word with it, correct vocab, I will give you that. I'm looking for correct vocab on these. In the first one, I'm going to ask you to find angle 2 first. Oh, no, you don't have to find angle 2 first. You could go at this two different ways. You don't have to find that first. I'm going to measure of angle 1. Notice now I'm putting the little m outside because I'm talking about the specific measure. Measure of angle 1 is going to be 87 degrees because 87 and 1 are alternate interior angles. So that's what I would need, alternate interior angles. Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be corresponding angles theorem?
There is no pairs of corresponding angles in this drawing. Those two would be considered alternate interiors. Now, there's two ways. I've highlighted in purple here a way that I can find the measure of angle 2. And I'm going to be doing this by consecutive interior angles. The measure of angle 2 is going to be 180 minus 87, which would give me 93. Consecutive interior angles add to 180. Now, somebody may, as an alternative way, once you know angle 1, an alternative way to find angle 2 would be to look at angle 1 and angle 2 together and say, so when I'm looking at it this way, I'm dealing with what we called linear pairs. If I look at this, linear pairs add to 180, so I could justify the measure of angle 2. It would actually look exactly the same, but I'm just thinking about it as the linear pair with angle 1 as opposed to the consecutive interior with what was given. Still getting the same answer, but again, this is just an alternative way to get to the measure of angle 2. Either of those would work. Now, AJ, I'd be talking your corresponding in number 2. The measure of angle 1 is going to be 78 because that corresponds to, and it's parallel lines. This is corresponding angles because corresponding angles are equal. So there's that one. And then I would go on, and this came up in the last set of problems, I would say since this is 78 degrees, measure of angle 2 is 78 degrees because those are all, vertical angles. And then I'm going to show you an alternative to that one. Go ahead, Dominique.
Would it be okay if because the 78 and angle 2 that they're alternate?
That was my next, yeah, that's what I was just going to drop in here as the alternative. So for the angle 2, you could use this as the vertical pair, but what Dominique is saying is exactly what I was going to next. You could look at this 78 that's given and this angle 2 that's given, and say the measure of angle 2 is 78 because they are alternate exterior angles, and alternate exterior angles are equal. So a lot of vocabulary here, and again, even though it says justify the theorem, you drop the correct vocabulary term and I'm good with that. Just knowing what to call them. Now, moving on to number 3, these guys, and this isn't required here, but I know these are congruent to each other because they are corresponding. You don't have to have that, but just, you know, practicing the vocab and like what's going on here. Those guys are going to be congruent to each other because they're corresponding angles. So I would be saying 37 equals 6x minus 11. Add 11 to both sides. 48 equals 6x. Divide by 6. X is 8. And again, you don't have to name it, but just for practice, I'm going to talk about it. Moving on to the second one. Moving on to the second one here. You know what I don't like about this problem is this is supposed to be an angle name. Like that's supposed to be angle 2. It's not just a 2. I got to double check that exam and make sure that that's not the kind of thing that's there. But let me just explain this one the way that it's presented. I'm going to first figure out what this angle 2 is, because these two guys right here are a linear pair, and two angles that lie on a line have to equal 180. So the measure of angle 2 for this one, this is all that problem above it, is 180 minus 142 would be 38 degrees. And you're welcome to use a calculator. I'm doing this stuff in my head because I can. So now that I know that this is 38 degrees, I'm going to use that to go find x. And I can set 2 times the quantity x plus 9 equal to 38 because those guys they're here and here. Those are alternate interiors. And again, you don't have to write that down. The directions don't say give the theorem or vocab, but I'm giving it to you because of the need to practice. I'm going to distribute 2x plus 18. I got loud bracelets on today. So take 18 away. 2x is 20. Divide by 2. X is going to be 10. Yeah. The position, and I think this drawing's kind of bad to be quite honest, 142 and 2x plus 9, 2 times the quantity x plus 9 are not positioned in an equivalent relationship because, and let me just sort of shade so you can maybe see better than what I mean. That's the 2x plus 9 angle, and that's the 142 angle. Those aren't alternate exteriors, they're not alternate interiors, they're not corresponding. Those guys don't have any equality relationship. But the drawing is, I'm sorry, this figure and the way it was all labeled to begin with is not great. Moving on to number 5, the explain your reasoning. We're going to drop vocab again. We're going to drop vocab into these. There's different ways you could go about this, but I might explain that the measure of angle 1 is 112 because 112 and 1 are vertical angles. Different ways to go about it, but I might explain it that way. Knowing that the measure of angle 1 is 112, my next move, I'm going to grab 1 and say it's congruent to 3 because those guys are corresponding angles. And then my last move, I could do a linear pair, 2 and 3, but let me bring in something else. These two guys right here are consecutive interiors. I could do a linear pair. I could justify that way. But those two guys are consecutive interiors, and consecutive interiors add to 180. So, oopsie, I forgot my measure of angle 3 equals 68. I would have gotten the same thing if I had done that linear pair idea. So this consecutive interiors would go here, or I could talk about how 2 and 3 are a linear pair. 2 and 3 are a linear pair, and the measure of angle 3 would still be the 180 minus 112, because I know angle 2 is 112. There's my 68 again. So either of those would work. There's different ways you could go about it, but I think I kind of exhausted some of the way you talk about it. 112 and 3, alternate exteriors. You could have used that to get to 3 as well. Let me write that one down too, because actually that one might be a little bit more obvious. I like that I brought this consecutive interiors and linear pair. Or the measure of angle 3 equals 112 alternate exterior angles. Last but not least on this page, before we go on to chapter 4, what's angle 1, you guys? How come? 45, how come? Corresponding, exactly. 45 and angle 1 are the same because of corresponding. What would 45 and angle 3 have to add to? Consecutive interiors. They would be 180. So let's see, what did you guys just say? We got this, 45 and 1, the measure of angle 1 equals 45, because those are corresponding angles. I know the measure of angle 1 is 45. How about 1 and 2? Those correspond too. Those are corresponding angles. I got to go into consecutive interiors here. The measure of angle 3 is going to be 180 minus 45, which would put me at 135 with the consecutive interiors. So the justification are using, I'm going to ask you for vocabulary. Explain your reasoning, give me vocabulary. My directions are clear about that on the exam as well. Second page of chapter 3, alternate exterior angles is what I'm seeing. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. Explain your reasoning. Alternate exterior angles are congruent. So 3 times the quantity x minus 8 equals 2 times the quantity x plus 10. 3x minus 24, I'm distributing 2x plus 20. I'm going to take 2 x's away from both sides. I can solve this problem a few different ways, but this is my choice to start. X minus 24 equals 20. I'm going to add 24 to both sides. X is 44. Number 2, dealing with consecutive interiors that add to 180. Hey, Star. Hi. Consecutive interiors add to 180. 4x minus 12 plus 120 is 180. Take 120 away from both sides. I'm imagining taking 120 away from both sides. 4x minus 12 equals 60. Add 12 to both sides. Oh, I could have combined like terms first. Doesn't matter. Still getting there. 4x equals 72. 72 divided by 4, I believe, is 18. 18 times, yep, sure is. Consecutive interiors. Number 4, write an equation that passes through a point. I have a feeling this is going to be a place that many of you need to go home and spend some time watching this. I have a feeling this is a place many of you will need to go home and spend some time watching this. Number 4, if lines are parallel to each other, I have to work on a separate piece of paper. I don't have enough room. If lines are parallel to each other, parallel lines have the same slope. So I go and realize that from this equation, y equals negative 6x plus 8, the slope is going to be negative 6. I have a point, negative 1, negative 4. I'm going to use this as an x value. I'm going to use this as a y value. I need to write an equation in y equals mx plus b. The reality is I have a y, I have an x, and an m. I'm going to use those to solve for b. Later I'm going to come back and just drop in this slope. I need b. So my work is going to look like this. Y equals negative 4 equals m x plus b. I'm using the values that I have. Negative 4 equals 6 plus b. I'm going to take 6 away from both sides. B is equal to negative 10. What's my final equation? My final equation is when I go back and say, here's my b, here's my m. The equation of this new line is y equals negative 6x minus 10. Using the m and the xy that I'm given in order to solve for the b. Problem number 5, write equation for the line passing through the point negative 1, 3. My point is negative 1, 3. There's my xy. I have perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. The slope of this first line is negative 4. The slope, it's positive 4. The slope of this line is positive 4. Its opposite reciprocal is negative 1/4. I have a y, I have an m, I have an x, I need a b. I'm going to take the y, the m, the x that I have, I'm going to use it to find my b. My slope is negative 1/4. 3 equals negative 1/4 times negative 1 plus b. Opposite reciprocal. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. I believe this is section 3-4 notes. When I was looking for a couple things today, I was looking at gray note packets, section 3-4. 3 equals positive 1/4 plus b. Take away a fourth. I'm going to think in fractions here. That's 2 3/4 equals b. That's 2.75. If you actually go through, a fourth is 0.25. $3 minus a quarter is $2.75. You can think about it that way. I go back. My slope is negative 1/4. Y equals negative 1/4 x plus 2 3/4. Negative 1/4 x plus 2 3/4. Now, what I've got going on we got a couple more minutes here with second hour that I can get through a few more of these. You guys are going to have to watch this stuff on YouTube. You can come after school if you want to watch this on YouTube as well. If you want to watch it in my room, I'll be here. Now, tell whether the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So we have to compare slopes. We have to do slope calculations. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We have to do slope calculations. So for line 1, the slope of line 1 is going to be 12 minus 3. y2 minus y1, 9 over 4 minus 2. That's 2. I might have to simplify that in a minute, but let me do the other slope and let's just see what happens. 8 minus 10. 8 minus 10 is going to give me a negative 2. 14 minus 5. Negative 2 over positive 9. These guys are opposite reciprocals. 9/2 opposite reciprocal is negative 2/9. These lines are perpendicular. No. Calculate. Show me that you can calculate. I got to prepare you for Algebra 2. We can't just leave this skill behind. For line 1 in the second problem. So, why did I go and squish this all up? There's my formula. Line 1, the slope of line 1 is negative 2 minus negative 10, which is going to give me a plus sign there. And 4 minus negative 6, which is going to give me a plus sign there. That's going to leave me with 8/10. I might have to reduce that. Let's see. Line 2, 4 minus negative 6 is going to give me 4 plus 6. 0 minus negative 8 is going to give me plus 8. This is 10/8. 8/10 and 10/8, they are reciprocals, but they're not opposite reciprocals. So these lines aren't parallel or perpendicular. If the slopes were the same, they'd be perpendicular. Now, again, parallel lines, and I'll just leave this off here, you're going to use this M. You're going to use this M along with your X and Y to figure out what the new equation is. Perpendicular lines for the next group. Opposite reciprocal is going to be positive 1/3. The opposite reciprocal of -3 is positive 1/3. The opposite reciprocal for negative 1/3 is going to be positive 3. Use your x, use your y, x, your y, figure out the b to write those equations. I'll post the finished video up later.